Hey guys, Metalloid here, and I'm bringing you a 2v2 on Repository versus Best UNSC player and Best Cubby player, who I only recently found out is actually Snizzy and Siquidit. After playing them a few times, I figured that I didn't know who the Arbiter was, but I figured that the UNSC could only be one of two people. Well, yeah, pretty much. Well, first, because I know it's not me, because I'm right here, but I figured it could either be Snizzy or it could be BHM2 Legit, and I asked BHM2 Legit, and it turns out it's Snizzy, and then Siquid started posting his videos, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that does make sense. So now we're playing a game here on Repository, and we are Anders Arbiter, and we're versing Cutter Arbiter. Now, the main thing here is that you don't have to go hogs if you don't want to, because the defender's advantage on this map is so large, which is also the same reason that Forge can be played well on this map, that a canny down tech is just not that effective. So defensive strategies will do much better. As with any UNSC map or matchup, eco is going to be the most important part. So it's always very important to upgrade as many pads as you can as early as possible so that you get a really strong mid-game to late game. So their ghost is being a bit annoying and harassing my hog here, so I'm just going to pull it back and send my other one down so I can hopefully catch the ghost there. So now I'm just going to quickly try to get it here, and I actually do get it, so that's really good. And I'm just going to continue on my way collecting more supplies, and I'm going to go for a Reactor 4th on my main base. You always want to go for a Reactor 4th on your main, because that's just going to be the most versatile build no matter what you're trying to do. It's going to give you Gunner at a reasonable time, it's going to let you upgrade your pads as soon as you get it up. And it's, and if I were Cutter or Cutter, I would be able to throw a Mac Blast for my teammate. Basically, it lets me do anything, it doesn't tell the other team too much, and puts me in a good position. So I'm decided, even though they're ramming my hogs, I'm gonna at least build a few hogs because I feel that hogs are worth it no matter what. And and in this case, I have only 125 for the gunner. So since gunner only costs 125, I'm going to try to upgrade a pad right away. This also applies for Cutter Arbiter mirrors. And in that case, with a Cutter Arbiter mirror, you're gonna have the other team is Arbiter's. The other team's Arbiter is probably gonna come on offense, and your team's Arbiter gonna go on offense. And so you're both gonna go hogs, and then it's just gonna turn into a weird sort of game with both Arbiters get no eco. However, in this case, their Arbiter's trying to play defense, which should put my Arbiter at an advantage as long as he can take advantage of that. So since my Arbiter is going to be untouched, he can upgrade all of his pads right away. It's basically free. Which means that their UNSC is probably not going to go hogs, and typically I wouldn't go hogs, right? Well, that's just it. If I don't go hogs and their UNSC still goes hogs, my Arbiter is kind of screwed. He has to recall or something, because then they're going to have hogs on his base, and I'm not going to have nothing to help him out. So he'd have to recall. So by that same logic, shouldn't you just go hogs every time? Like, even if their Arbiter is on defense? Because he may be safer, I guess if I were hitting his base or something. But if he's off chasing my Arbiter around, he can't be at my hogs. So if he's going to run between us, then my Arbiter can actually still do damage if he wants to. Blood had built one grunt this game, but I don't think it's really worth to build like any grunts. But another thing is that by me having the gunner, it allows him to build whatever he really wants for free, because it'll uncamp his lift. It looks like they built a turret at the back of their base, but I'm not too worried about that. All my hogs are for, I just cleared one of the little rebel sentinels on the side for a little bit of money, just to pick off suicide grunts. Suicide grunts 160, extra hogs 150, but any money that my Arbiter doesn't have to spend raging on these suicide grunts is great. And if I did a better job, I guess, keeping my hogs alive, and maybe if my Arbiter wasn't so weak already, then he would be, successfully raging down those tanks. and then I would be easily able to prevent any sort of counter-aggression from their Arbiter by using my Hogs to camp his left. So what's going on here is Blit tried to go for a Summit 6th because he wanted to go double Summit, and then I told him, I was telling him, like, I wouldn't do that, I would go single Summit Rage. Now when you go single Summit Rage, you want to go Summit 7th so that you get the most amount of eco as you possibly can. And when you play Arbiter, you always want to get eco up before you get your tech. That'll put you in the best position possible, speed up your tech 2 timing, and allow you to get vamps if you need them, or just a tech 2 Arbiter if you want. So I've locked my base here, because I don't want their Arbiter raging down my stuff. And I'm going to try to go Fortress, but I see that their UNSC is either down-teched or at least he's still on station or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I just clicked on it, but I didn't look. So I cancel that. This means that he's either going to try to stock push me or can he down-tech. Either way, the answer is the same. You don't go Fortress, you stay on the single depot, and you build a few, like 2 Gremlins, 1 in each base. I got as many pads upgraded as I possibly can, but I can't get the other 2 pads upgraded because I'm going to have to go for Fortress and Canny soon. Or I'll have to drop a D-bomb or something. We have a few Banshees and we're being annoying, denying their summit. But we can't really do too much though at that. They have 1 Wolverine, so it's just going to boil down to the games should turn out and stabilize, and because they're going to be able to push that off. This game is a bit long, so I did skip through a few portions of it, because there's a lot of downtime in here where it's just me running back and forth between our bases with tanks, not actually engaging anything, because we're scouting, and so we see when they're going to try to push on each side, and they don't want to push into us when we're sitting there waiting for it. So Blit ran over and dropped those 2 Suicide Grunts to kill another pad, and that's kind of obnoxious more than anything. And because of it, I'm going to have to throw him a heal. So I get Fortress, and I have my Tech 3 coming up, because otherwise there's going to be a period where he's going to have his canny, and I'm not. So I need to have my canny coming up really soon. I need it as fast as possible. If I got Fortress a lot earlier, then I'd get a 2nd depot, because when you get the 2nd depot, then I'll just have it. So now my canny's finished, and we see on the map that they've bought a Super Sentinel. And now we see that now he's throwing a Wolverine at my tanks. So that means one of 2 things. That means that either A, he's full pop, and he's trying to clear pop, or B, he's misrallied. Turns out he's probably full pop. So I'm getting up to full pop. I'm just 1 pop short, which would be a Gremlin if I wanted it. But I don't like to build more than the 2 Gremlins, because the Gremlins move slower than your tanks. So since Gremlins move slower than tanks, it slows my whole army down when I try to move at them. So they're just an early game thing to try to hold off any sort of all-in push from them. But once that stage of the game is passed, don't build them. Just like I feel the same way about the Gremlins as I feel about Super Sentinels. I don't worry about Super Sentinels. I think they're terrible, honestly. They're good at what they do, but they are not worth it. Because you would be building them really early in the game. And the thing is that they cost $250, which is essentially an upgraded pad, and if you have a Super Sentinel, that's a tank you don't have. Because 2 pop, you would have 3. If you had 3 Super Sentinels, that's 2 tanks you don't have, but one that's a whole tank. So that's $250 value that you're missing in your army, whereas you have the $250 value of the Sentinel, whereas you could have had the $500 value of the tank. So now what's going on is I cryoed in the engagement, and their Arbiter got separated, so we were able to push that off pretty nicely there. The Gremlins did their job, kept his tanks back while I was able to get a decent cryo as well, and he's forced to debomb. I have a lot of weak tanks, but he can't actually push through because the defender's advantage is too large. So I'm trying to get some good cannies on his tanks, and my cannies are just about back on those top tanks. But I didn't realize that. I just used the canny on that one tank, and, well, I let him get away without cannying those tanks. Either way, we're still pretty even on the tanks, but I'm pretty confident that my eco is probably a bit better than his. He may be double fortress, he may not, I don't know. but I should also try to upgrade that last pad on the top of my base. I was a bit nervous about that because I wanted to try to go for PT. Usually you'd get max pop before you go for PT, but in this case we had a good trade. We had a decent trade with them. They threw a D-bomb and a Mac Blast, and they're not going to have a Mac Blast, so I can down tech right away, and the air war is too close for them, so they can't stop my PT if they want to, and since I'm Anders, it researches really fast. Notice how after I paid for a 1200 reactor, and right away I'm able to queue up my PT, because it's only 450. And with the down tech, I'm going to throw a heal, because not only do my tanks need a heal, but my Arbiter also needs a heal. And since my Arbiter needs a heal, heck, might as well heal him with my tanks. So as long as I'm sitting in front of his base, there's no immediate threat to us. They don't want to push because they didn't have their Arbiter back, and well, they don't have another D-bomb. So all we have to do is stay in good position in front of this base, and occasionally have my Covey have an air unit at the top side of the map to scout if they're trying to push up there. I built another supply pad instead of a barracks because I want to wait till I have a fortress before I start adding on tech. The general rule is you build one vehicle depot per base you have, but 7 upgraded supply pads is enough to triple pump, which means that you can triple pump tanks off of a station fortress. Usually if you have a little little extra money, that'll be funding that triple pump. It's not a fluid triple pump, but it gets the job done. It is faster than double pump, even if it is only slightly. So in this case, we're going to put one tech, and by tech I mean like a barracks for Spartans, or a field armory for reserve/reinforcements, for every like 1.5 bases or so. So what's going to happen is that on 2 bases, you're going to have 2 vehicle depots, and then probably a barracks. And then when you get your 3rd base, you're going to add on another vehicle depot, and then you're going to get your field armory. So I tried to push here because I feel I can do a bit of damage, but I guess I just wasn't paying attention, didn't realize my Arbiter wasn't with me at this point. So that was a really bad push. I lost a lot of tanks, we still do have good air control, and we're trying to secure a base there. But if my Arbiter was with me, that fight would have gone so much better for me. However, we do have their Arbiter separated from their tanks because he chased me out, and I do manage to kill him with my canny. So we're actually pretty safe at this point, because they don't have a D-bomb, and even though he's going to have more tanks than me, he can't actually push right now. So since we have an Arbiter and they don't, we have about a minute to do damage for, well, essentially free. As long as my Arbiter doesn't get insta-cannied, we have a huge advantage right now. So I'm just going to keep trying to make my tanks, and so his tanks are right here. I'm going to canny right away. But he doesn't want to canny because he has no way to deal with my Arbiter if he misses all of his cannies, so he's trying to wait. However, that means he doesn't use his canning on my tanks, so I actually get a free tank kill and just run away. So that was definitely a good trade. But he was up like 2 to 3 tanks. So I'm going to build another supply pad because I still just need to keep double pumping. I'm really getting close to full pop, but I'm going to have to throw some heals, and I know I'm going to be losing a lot of tanks, so I need to be able to keep replacing those. Otherwise, I'm going to be in some serious trouble. These are the main mechanics of just playing in a tank fight. Now, on this map, the rebel bases are actually best cleared by vampires. So when you have an air lead, you should clear them out with your vamps, and then possibly send your Arbiter, if you're not going to have an engagement or anything, over to collect the money, because who doesn't want a free 300? So when you clear out those bases, then you're going to want to have your UNSC is going to want to take his triple base up at the side at the far base at the same side of their UNSC. That's the base in this case at the very north of the map, which means that if they want to stop my base, they are going to have to go as far away as possible from defending their Covey main base, which will give me the opportunity to push in on that. However, that's as ideal as that would be, you don't always get the chance to clear that one out because sometimes you have to keep your units together. So in this case, clear the top base, and well, I'm just waiting to try to take that base and we see that they actually have Spartans already. I don't have any Spartans, but I'm working on it. So we're just going to try to stall for time. I'm telling him at this point that I don't think we can really hold this base. They have their Spartans and they're upgraded a bit. I think right there that's chain gun, and then I don't know if I don't know when he'll get neural implant, but there's a chance that he will. And because neural implant is just the important upgrade when you're dealing with Spartan tanks, that's the one that just turns the tide of any fight. We're gonna want to make sure that we are at least chain gun, if not neural, before we try to fight that. However, Blitz Vamps go and push in there, so I have really no choice but to also engage in that. So I'm going to throw a cryo onto their tanks, pull back a bit. I can't really cryo that air, it's too intermingled there. I can't be sure that I'm only going to hit his Vamps, and well, then I'm going to try to canny that Spartan tank down. So I do manage to canny the Spartan tank, and their Arbiter comes raging in. I'm losing a lot of tanks, they're throwing a Mac Blast, and this is just a horrible fight. We're just losing absolutely everything. But I'm just going to keep making tanks back at my base. As long as I keep my tank production up, we hopefully will be able to stabilize from this. However, they have this huge advantage of tanks, but we do have this Citadel base. Now, I would never have Citadel'd that base, because if you're going to lose a base, don't put 400 into it before you lose it. Sure, you'll lose it slower, but when you upgrade a base like that, you want to think about it as, I'm going to pay 400 because I'm going to keep it. But we have an air lead now because we had this base for so long. And I'm getting my Spartans. I'm going to be able to get to neural implant really fast because Anders has the really cheap tech and it upgrades at 3/4 speed. Well, yeah, it was 3/4 of the regular upgrade time. So now our Covey is going to push over a bit, and he's going to try to harass their Covey because he has the air lead. The air lead is so important. If the air lord's too close, then you can't even risk it. But we had an air lead, but he pushes his Vamps right over the tanks and right when they're healing, and that's just a really bad spot. So he loses a few Vamps, and suddenly we went from having air lead to not so much. However, I was convinced that we had lost the game at that point because they had all their tanks and their Arbiter, but they stopped to kill our Citadel Expo, which had a shield. I wanted to take that third base, but Bullet clicked it up first, and well, I can't really argue with him because there's no other base to take, and if they're gonna get a Covey Expo, then we need one too. So after a while, I had switched my barracks for the field armory, and then I had paid for reinforcements because I needed it. At that point in the game, if I don't have a third base, I have to get it on my 2 bases. I prefer to get it on 3, but I just needed to get the upgrade. So I'm gonna put up a 3rd depot to help myself fill in that population now that I have the space for it. And I have 2 more tanks building, and well, they're trying to push in at the top side. So tanks get a bit caught there, but it's fine. I kill one of his tanks, he kills one of mine, but I'm able to kill up a tank right away. He kills another one of my tanks, I'm going to go try to canny another one of his. I don't think, yeah, his tank didn't die there, which is unfortunate, but it's okay. It died right there. So now they have their Arbiter raging in, and well, we are in not the best positioning because they are in I'm a bit choked up by the base, but it's not too significant. Some of his fire will go onto my base, and, well, I'm just continuing to make tanks. As long as I have all my depots glowing, then we're in good shape. He's targeting down my Spartans. I'm trying to save them, putting them in any tanks necessary, although, it would be better if I don't put them in the dying tanks, but it's just whatever I need to get done there. As long as I try to keep them alive the best I can, that's all I can hope for. So I have to throw a D-bomb because we lose our Arbiter. And I'm trying to save that Spartan, but I don't think I do. I know I don't save the one in the front, but I don't even save the one towards the back. However, now I have these 3 depots up, and as much as they had a small tank advantage and they have an air advantage, I have the defender's advantage. So as my tanks reinforce, I'm going to get 2 or 3 tanks at a time, and his tanks are just not going to be there. So I'm going to be fighting at a significant advantage for a few moments in time, in which I can trade very effectively. So every time, I'm just trying to back up slowly a bit, and then as soon as I know my wave of tanks is coming in, I'm just going to push in nice and slowly and try to wipe them out with my cannies. I got to keep making sure I'm building tanks. When you're playing UNSC and you're trying to spam a lot of tanks, being as tight with, you don't have to be as tight with your money as you do when you're playing Covey, because you can't actually afford to build as effectively from tanks as you can effectively build Banshees. So me not clicking a tank up, that's fine. I have 3 depots, it'll get built eventually. My money will just get wheedled down. We push them off there, and now that I get back closer to full pop, at 36 pop, I see, well, 40 pop is probably better than 39 pop, so I'm going to build some wolves. I click up one Wolverine, and now I'm going to click up another one. So I'm also going to pay for volley as well. I'm getting my Spartans back out because I had to switch it back over to the barracks, because you can't not have the Spartans. They are a necessity. And we're just getting in position to defend them at this base. They're pushing up on the side. We saw it in time with the Vamp, and our Vamps are going to stay right over my army. I have my Wolverine a bit back next to the base there. Just don't want to put it too far in front or anything. And I'm getting volley. So they're going to push in here, and we're going to go and meet them. We don't want to get choked up. They drop their Mac Blast, and I throw my Cryo. And then they throw their D-Bomb, and this is going to be, wait for it, epic. So I land my Cryo on every single, almost all of his tanks. And I don't know if I hit any of the Vamps, but now we're able to push in. I have my Wolverines in the back, we have our Vamps overhead, and most of the time, you don't want to put your Vamps in the fight. But in this case, because you want to get like first stasis, but in this case, I have Wolverines. So he thinks, oh, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get this stasis, but I actually have 2 Wolverines right there, right under my Vamps. So we're going to be able to win this air fight because I have these 2 Wolverines. Now, you might be thinking, well, why wouldn't you just have an extra tank? Well, that's just it. The difference in one tank when you're at like 12 or 13 pop is much less significant than the difference between 1 and 2 tanks. 1 and 2 tanks, double the damage, right? Double the health. But when you have 12 tanks, the difference between 12 tanks and 13 tanks is much less significant. Which is why it's much better to actually have 2 Wolverines or a Wolverine and a Cobra, because 40 pop is going to be better than 39 pop every time. That's why in Deathmatch you'll see people building Cobras, because they have Wraiths and they have tanks. I'm trying to get that Spartan. Unfortunately, I don't get it. But we're able to clean up the rest of their units. So in Deathmatch, they'll build the Cobra because there's Wraiths and tanks, so Cobras kill both of those. But in this case, if I build a Cobra, it'd help me deal with the tanks, but if I build the Wolves, it'll help us with the air war, and since the air war is actually going to be the more important piece here, I'd rather have the Wolverines, since the 2 volleys would also help me out with the tanks. However, now we find ourselves in a position that they found themselves earlier in the game. They had a huge lead after winning an engagement, and there's a shielded Expo in the middle. I see he's got an average of 1 shield per base, but he's got 2 on one base and none on the other. So seeing this opportunity, we decided we're going to push up all the way to the Cubby base. He's got his Vamps coming in to try to stop our Vamps, but we have an air lead. But I have my Wolverines here defending as well, so I'm going to go right for that temple, because I know that if I stop their Arbiter from getting out, even if I lose a few tanks, I'm going to be able to reproduce those tanks, and we're going to have an Arbiter in the fight, and they will not. They don't have a D-Bomb, so they cannot stop us at this point. I stopped the Arbiter from coming out, and at this point in the game, we have Arbiter raging in, I have my tank production continuing to steamroll forward, and I have my Spartans jumping back in my tanks. I have my tanks running around the other side of the base, we have our Arbiter pushing onto those tanks with his air hovering overhead, and I have my tanks hitting from the back. So now we have the air war, we have the tank war, and there's just nothing they can do. We have them completely locked down, and they resign at this point in the game. This was a very good game. I thought that they had real chance to push and win earlier, but they just didn't seize the opportunity. They were being very cautious. So anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. I thought this was a pretty decent game. I just hadn't gotten around to commentating it for a while. And, you know, just let me know what map you want me to go over next. Like I said, Super Sentinels suck.